Are we ready for the broadcast? Great. Okay, I am calling this regular meeting of Town of Gibsons Council to order on December 2nd, 2025 at 3:30 p.m. We're honored to be gathered on the traditional territory of the Skokomish Nation. And we need to approve the agenda just with the change of moving item 5.3 to the end, just prior to item 12. Moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor DeAndrade. All those in favor, the motion carries. And we have minutes, and we're not going to rush right into those because Councillor Kroll's informed me there might be an omission.
Thank you, Mayor White.
Sorry, the minutes of November 18th, 2025.
That's correct. On the motion that was made, R 2025-185 for the zoning of 1050 and 1118 Sunshine Coast Highway, the second and that the OCP be further revised to align with these zoning changes was omitted in the minutes.
Is that, was that just forgotten there? So, okay, well, we'll adopt those minutes with that addition. Does that work? Okay, so we can adopt those minutes with the addition as read out by Councillor Kroll, moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor DeAndrade. All those in favor? The motion carries. And business arising from the minutes, I had some reconsiderations and motions that I shared with council. I think that a lot of these are just for consideration in this process. I don't think it makes sense to immediately address them today, as this is a process that's still going on for a couple more months. But I did want to be transparent about some of the concerns I have, and I wanted to discuss with councillors. I talk about how to best deal with the process going forward too, and just some transparency on that too, because I think the key one that I would like to bring up today is the reconsideration of the schedule, and that being that I'm not sure from talking to councillors, everybody knew what the motion in that case was going to, what the outcome of that was going to be, and it right now what we're looking at is we would be having a public hearing first, and then second and third reading after that. From talking to some of you, we would prefer to have a second reading first, and then go to public hearing and third reading. That's my preference, and that would give us some space in mid-December to when we consider second reading to consider some of these issues I've raised here, in addition to the ADP's input that we're getting tomorrow, and in addition to all the referrals will be in by then. They'll be in by the 15th. So if we have a second reading on the 16th, that would be a meeting where we can kind of look at those issues closer. So that means a lot of this could be deferred till then, which I've given people the heads up on was my intent. So to reconsider that motion, which is, and that a public hearing be scheduled for official community plan by law number 1339 and zoning bylaw number 1342. After referral, comments are circulated to council and posted online. I think in reconsidering that, I think we could just say, and second reading be scheduled. Does that work for just corporate officer and planning as the next step? Or do we need to schedule a public hearing as well still?
You could keep that and add where it says after referral comments are circulated to council and posted online, you could replace that line with after second reading.
Okay, right, so, yeah. So instead, we'll keep the public hearing wording, but we'll say we'll say after second reading. So that makes it clear that we're doing a second reading first. Okay, so you'll second that amendment?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Lumley?
Yeah, it's through the mayor. It's kind of a damned if you do and damned if you don't. We kind of changed the order of operation to give the public a better perception that we're listening to them, which most people thought that if you have your third reading and then third reading adoption, like if you have your third reading after the public hearing, basically everything's been determined by then. So the public sentiment was like, what's the point? I think that was the original that was our kind of like answer to that, was to have the public hearing like prior to the second reading. And that's why I think the second, third reading got put together. And I don't think it's kind of the same process. You get all that information, you get the public hearing, and you get all the referrals, and you get the ADP, and then there's less chance of other information being circulated to council. But at the same time, the public kind of has afforded an idea that what the public hearing was kind of it was what it was supposed to do. Like maybe, well, I guess so. But I mean, originally that's why we went through the new process. And I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I'm just saying, just from a public perception standpoint, it's kind of like, well, when it gets to the public hearing, and I can only assume that you want to do third reading right after the public hearing the same night. Like, yeah, so
That's typical.
then it'll seem like that's the same perception. It's like, anyway, that's,
I hear you.
yeah.
I hear your point.
Okay.
But I think what you're suggesting is that the public hearing is our chance for public input into this process. There's been public input into this process for months. And a public hearing, as we've talked about a lot here and elsewhere, is a really flawed way of getting public input. It often is. The public hearing is kind of more, it's often at the end of the process. This is why we talked about the residents' assembly and having all these other processes early on to get public input. And often the way a public hearing works is people say, I'm in favor of this or I'm opposed to that, and that helps to inform council on their final vote. And it's not really, unfortunately, it's not really a good platform for people to show up and say, well, I think this part should be changed, or I think that part should be changed. That's better early on in the process, and that's better even in the, in the letters, what we've been receiving and considering and influencing council up to that point. So I don't think we should conflate a public hearing with public, comprehensive public input into a process that could actually create changes. It's always too late in the process for that point, and they're never good. But anyway, I also think another point is to go into a public hearing. I think it also helps to have the document to be where as close to complete as we feel it can be, and I don't feel it's there yet. I'm not ready to go. Personally, I don't think it's there to go to public hearing because we've got referrals, we've got other considerations. And we've got the ADP comments that are still coming. So it would be better for those to be considered and integrated at second reading before, so the public knows what they're saying yay or nay to. So that's part of the consideration here. And I know it's
Should we
damned if you do,
change
damned
the-
if you don't.
yeah, should we
I
change the
agree with
name?
you.
The
I agree with
public
you, but I'm
hearing?
slightly more on the.
You just said it doesn't matter what anyone says at the public hearing, so.
No, I didn't at all. I know, I'm saying people say, sometimes, the way a public hearing will work is you might have 300 people all come out and say, like, we're totally opposed to this, and that should influence council. That should absolutely influence council. Or you might have the absolute, that's the way they're supposed to work.
Okay.
Yeah. Any more? Councillor D'Andrade?
Yeah, interest, because I had this question, and that's the impression that we were going to go through second reading, and then we were having the public hearing. And perhaps I didn't understand the options, but I think my concern of having the public hearing at the second, because we cannot hear from anybody else. Am I correct? If we have a public, so we cannot get input, so we come with some draft at the second hearing, and we cannot hear from anybody else, right?
At the second reading?
No, I'm saying if we do the opposite, we have the hearing before,
Yeah.
then we cannot hear. And so I think this is, I appreciate this motion because I rather discuss, this is a big document. I don't think everybody agrees at this point. So it gives another round of understanding. Hopefully, we can provide more input and have better understanding. And so anyways, I appreciate this motion.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just confirming that the second reading would come after the referrals. That's what you're saying,
It would
right?
be, it's pretty tight in the schedule. Like what would happen is the deadline for the referrals and it would have been tight anyway if the public hearing were on the 16th. We might have, like the referrals, the deadline is the 15th at noon. So, however, a lot of these organizations have already sent in referrals previously. But it's also mandated that they need to have a second chance of referrals and first reading. So we're kind of expecting, I mean, you never know, but a lot of them are probably going to say, thanks for integrating our comments the first time around. And that'll likely be it because they already had a chance. But we will get those referrals by the 16th. And we can, if council will have a chance to read them and perhaps integrate them as amendments. Councillor Kroll.
So just for clarification, when you say you're just looking at the referrals of the Sunshine Coast Regional District Ministry of Transportation and Transit and the Squamish Nation.
No, there was
Are we
there was
just sort of
the
opening
ALC.
the thing wide open
No,
again?
I think that's not a complete list. Director of Planning, what was the complete list?
So for the OCP, it would be the Agricultural Land Commission, the SCRD, Ministry of Transportation and Transit, Squamish Nation, and School District 46. And then for the zoning bylaw, it would be the SCRD, Ministry of Transportation, and Squamish Nation.
So I've already gone out. Just waiting to get the comments back. Councillor Kroll.
And just for further clarification, so it is part of the legislative process that they be given more time. Is that correct?
No, so the legislative process for the OCP requires a referral to the Agricultural Land Commission after first reading. And it also requires a consideration of the impacts to the applicable waste management plans and financial plan. So that was done at the last meeting. And then for the zoning bylaw, the requirement is to get the Ministry of Transportation and Transit approval after third reading. But we send them the bylaw early so that when it gets to third reading, they've seen it.
Thank you for that. But do they have a period in which they have to reply? Or could this drag on until the new year because we don't hear back from them?
I can answer that. It's the 15th at noon. Yeah. Yeah, and then some may not reply, and then the deadline's done. I mean, that often happens, right? And especially when they've already seen it, so, but that's the deadline. Councillor D'Andrade.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a clarification. If we need to, I mean, in a perfect world, we would send the zoning at third reading. So it is pretty much what we established, but we might change what we already sent. So how does it work?
Well, you mean for the referrals?
Yeah.
Well, that's just the way, they get it after first reading, and absolutely.
So if we change it,
Change after, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
So for the Ministry of Transportation, they need to approve it after third reading. So we just give them an early heads up to let them know we've got first reading on this bylaw, and we'll send you the updated version after third reading.
Okay, so are we ready to vote on this? All in favor? The motion carries. And then to address, to get there, I've also been thinking about doing a workshop prior to then as well, in the next week. At least I think two of you have, I think at least a couple councillors have suggested it would help. So, and that would, part of it would be to look at some of these. I think we could probably just move a motion to schedule a workshop. Would probably do the trick. Nothing needs to be prepared ahead of time. Yeah, Councillor Lumley?
What's the workshop for?
To consider the alignment of I think if we schedule a workshop to consider the alignment of the zoning bylaw and the official community plan, that summarizes what a lot of the concerns I've raised are.
So that's what the workshop's for.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, to summarize that, a lot of them are in a lot of the comments in this agenda, but this would, and I know council's already in the last meeting talked about concerns about industrial zoning, and kind of talking about do we still have enough in the town? Are we planning for enough? And then rezoning to high and medium density would be a concern as well. And reducing the need for that to happen. But I think the only thing we really need to do is to schedule a workshop to consider the alignment of zoning bylaw and OCP. And you're moving that, Councillor Thompson? Or is that your hand up? Or?
My hand up.
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity for a workshop.
Yeah.
And because we've covered so much ground and we've dug into so many different things that, more information keeps coming up, more feedback from the community. And I really want to address aligning the OCP too closely with the zoning. And I think that's something that I want to be able to have the opportunity to look at all the ground that we've covered and be able to look at how these two are relating to each other. And so I'm moving that.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by Councillor D'Andrade. Any more? Okay. Councillor Kroll?
Thank you, Mayor White. Just for again, clarification, because I was of the impression at the onset of this that we were trying to get the OCP and the zoning bylaws to be more in line with one another. But I'm sensing that there's a perception that they're not aligning or that they're aligning too closely. And, as I said from the onset, it was my impression that we were trying to get them to align because having sat on the ADP for a number of years, every time we turned around and wanted to do something, the zoning and the bylaws were out of alignment, and we were sort of wrestling with it. So, you know, I'll take your comment for, you know, as it is, but I find it a little confusing at this point in the game to suddenly being faced with what we've achieved is not, is counter to what people seem to want.
I don't know. I think what people seem to want is you know, there's a lot of what people seem to want. It's like how to achieve that, though. I mean, we've got that in our public input. It's how to best achieve that, I think, is what we can discuss in the workshop. I do think, part of the concern I have, which we can talk more about in the workshop, is I believe this would be, we would probably be as far as I can tell so far, the only municipality in Canada that I've been able to find that has identical zones in the zoning bylaw and OCP. I'm trying hard to, and I'll ask planning more about that in the time between now and then, but I think it carries some risks. I think it's really, I mean, bold and experimental, but I don't know if that's what council intended to be going into. I don't know if that's what the community knew we were going into. So I think it's worth more discussion. It's something that I'm not sure has been tried much before, and it probably runs some risks, and we need to discuss it more as a council. Councillor Limley.
Yeah, I agree with Council Crowell, but you know what? I'll go to the workshop. Seems a little bit late for a workshop. We're this far. I do have some questions, though. It's like, I'm really hoping McElhaney, although they've done great work and everything, I know we had to pay them another $25,000. I'm hoping we're not going to incur more consultants' fees as we drag this out. Yeah, I mean, sure, let's have a workshop, but we talked about this for so many years, aligning the two, and now apparently some people don't want to align them at all, so I'm a little bit confused, and I've sat on council for quite a long time. We've made OCP amendments, and we've made zoning amendments, and I'm just confused, because what we do here isn't set in stone for 50 generations. People can change it, councils will change it. I mean, we're talking about a 5,000 person community and that has a growth rate of 73 people a year based on like the numbers that we got in our last meeting as far as what BC estimates our growth at. So I just don't want us to, it's just like we're creating this OCP and zoning for like a city or something. It's like, it's 73 people a year. I'm a little concerned that we're going to end up at the same place. And we're just going to keep beating our heads against and I agree, I've said this to you before personally too. It's like all these years we've been trying to kind of get the same for a plot of land, trying to kind of make it so that somebody doesn't go, well, your OCP says this. Oh, your zoning says this. I want the zoning or I want the OCP. It's fine. I'll come, like the workshop, let's have it, but I am confused.
Yeah, sure, Councillor Lumley, and I know you've got a strong view on this, and I think we might be headed to a point where the vote on the ultimate OCP and zoning bylaw is not going to be unanimous. That's where we're headed right now, but we still have some time to try to strive for some cohesion on this and find something that at least the council, and we're not going to make the whole community happy, but perhaps we can find something that finds a way forward where the council can be more unified, and that can only help going forward too, I think, as a community in coming years. I just want to add too about this piece about the zoning bylaw and the OCP, just to clarify, being aligned there's a big difference, in my view, between being aligned in policies and being aligned in, the policies in particular, being aligned in things like, are you using FSR versus units per hectare? These are the kinds of issues that we've run into in conflict in the past. But actually having every single zone to be upzoned in the zoning bylaw to meet the OCP, that's just a total different animal that I don't know. I've never heard of that happening before anywhere else, like I said, and we can talk about that more. And you've got your position on it. I know you're totally supportive of that. I'm not. And we'll talk about that more in our workshop. Yeah.
Just one other thing, Mayor, is that if I could ask for one thing in the workshop,
Yeah.
is because it was brought up in the last meeting, and it's the fact that once we go over 5,000, Bill 44, if somehow we can have a really, I don't want to go through it all, but if somebody can disseminate all that information for us and let us know, like, because people were talking about being able to challenge whatever our zoning, our OCP is based on Bill 44. Like, all these things are getting thrown out there. It'd be nice to know and to avoid, I just don't want to, I want to avoid stuff like that. So it'd be nice to know the impacts of these bills passed down by the province on municipalities and the direction they're currently going in, just to match it, see how it works.
Yeah, we've got that in previous reports, so we can just bring those reports
I mean,
back.
really
Yeah.
simple terms, maybe some pictures.
Okay. We'll see. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. To a couple of the things that Councillor Lumley brought up, first of all, it's fine for us to have a workshop, and I'm all for a workshop because I think, once again, we've got a lot of things in the air that need to be clarified and, settled upon. But what I am concerned about is we can have a workshop, and obviously staff will be there, but I think, when we have McElhenney there is a view on how the decisions we make are going to impact on the building community. I think they have a better, a good insight into that, as has been reflected at a number of the meetings we've had. I think it would be important to have feedback from the development community to get some insight on these decisions and how they're going to impact. It's fine for us to make decisions on, yes, this is what we're going to do, and then this council or the next council sits for the next 4 years and never sees a shovel go in the ground. And projected revenues from building permits go right out the window. So I think we need, if in some way, shape, or form, to have professional input at that workshop to just give us some insight as to how some of these decisions might impact.
That's not in the motion, so I appreciate your view on that, but yeah. I think we need to, especially if we're going to kind of pigeonhole certain developers and bring certain developers in, like there's been a lot of opportunity for input into this, especially by developers. I know planners, our planning staff has been reaching out directly to a lot of the property owners, and especially the larger property owners. So I think they're really well informed by what those views are. Councillor D'Andrade.
Thank you. I just would like to highlight that we approved many developments, I believe total close to 10, and they didn't proceed. It was not because we didn't approve and we didn't provide the conditions that they wanted. So we absorbed every single development. So I think we heard them, and we will continue to hear, but that's not the reason that they are not being built.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion? The motion carries. And I think that covers it. Everything else in here can be discussed further. So now on to bylaws. We've got 5.1, the 2026 Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw, 1340, and that is here for adoption. So we're familiar with this one. It's moved by Councillor DeAndrade, seconded by Councillor Kroll. All those in favor? The motion carries. And now we have the draft delegation of authority bylaw, which has been the subject of a lot of work over from multiple departments over years, I think, really, for this term of council. So I'll go to our corporate officer to introduce this.
Thank you, Mayor White. There's a lot of legislative background in here, just to give you some idea of the basis of where your authority lies. So attachment A included sections of the community charter, and we also attached a copy of the officers bylaw, which gives you the authorities that are delegated to the officers there under sections 147, 148, and 149, which is to the CAO, the Director of Finance, and the corporate officer. You have had some authority delegated to the Director of Planning and Development Services in the past. The authority that is derived there comes to the Local Government Act, and those sections were attached as Attachment C. And also through Section 77 of the Land Title Act, that section is in the report. That authority was granted previously, or still is, under the Town of Gibsons Development Permit Delegation Authority Bylaw number 1054, which was adopted in 2007. And this draft bylaw would repeal that bylaw and replace it. There are schedules in the draft bylaw, and those cover different authorities for different roles, different departments, different directors. And I'm going to just speak in general, and then if you have questions specific to the Director of Planning and Services Authority and Finance or those, I'll let those directors answer those questions directly. What has come to our attention specifically is that we were advised that our policies, which are attached as Attachment C, or Attachment D, actually, Attachment D, potentially could be questioned as to their legality, that Section 154 of the Community Charter requires the Council's authority be delegated through bylaw. So while it was timely, because the Director of Development and Planning Services wanted to review the authority there, staff said, look, several of us also have authorities. There's a gap here that we need to fill. So we brought them all under one draft bylaw with schedules to address the different areas of authority that would be delegated. So Attachment E is actually the draft of the bylaw. That draft bylaw starts at page 63. And it makes for a number of authorities to be delegated. Section 8 would formally bring the terms of the policies that are at Attachment D, policy number 1.15 and 1.16, the purchasing policy and the execution or signing of documents policy. What's it called? Authority to execute documents for routine transactions. That's policy 1.15 and purchasing policy 1.16. Those policies give the details which restrict the authority in significant ways and determine how that authority, their guidelines as to how that authority would be exercised. So those are attached. They remain in force. They are not changed at this point. So this bylaw is sort of an umbrella bylaw under which those policies would operate. Section 9, the town has not yet designated the appointment of a servicing officer, and so Section 9 accomplishes that. That is allowed under a regulation, and that regulation is attached to this staff report as Attachment F. Sections 10 to 14 give specific authority to various members of the staff, as I mentioned earlier in each of the sections. Section 15, in order to meet the requirement for maintaining final accountability to council, it is required that there be terms for reconsideration or appeal of a decision made by a delegated official. And that sets out the process by which someone can appeal that and bring it to council if they disagree with the decision of the delegated official. And the final decision would rest with you. Section 17 is the terms of Schedule B include the authority previously delegated to the Director of Planning and Development Services and that are in bylaw 1054. And since the new bylaw includes those provisions, the old bylaw would be repealed. And I'll leave it at that and open up to if you have any specific questions regarding the bylaw.
Councillor Thompson?
Through you, Mayor, I have a question for our Director of Planning about minor variances on page 71. And so when this authority is delegated to staff, how would something like a 25% parking reduction or a 1 meter height increase, those examples typically be looked at? In practice, what kinds of site conditions or planning conditions help you to assess whether a request like that makes sense for the property? And as a follow-up to that question, I'd like to add, if a variance turned out to be a tough call on behalf of planning or staff, or you're being put in an uncomfortable position by an applicant, whether that be a resident or a developer, is there room for the file to be referred back to council? I want to just be sure that staff would feel supported and have a clear option to elevate that decision.
Through the mayor, thank you for that question. I really appreciate it because coming up with this criteria was challenging, and we are often put in situations where we have to make tough calls. I think the way I would operate is if it was really difficult to make the call and the bylaw wasn't supporting me, I would first go to my CAO for some input. And then at that point, if we couldn't come up with a decision together, we would bring it to council. But what we would do is rely on the criteria that's in here. So the variance could not alter land use or density. It's consistent with the intent of the OCP. It doesn't contradict safety or environmental protection policies. And then this criteria is very black and white. So according to this bylaw, if it falls under this criteria, so if it's a variance and it's less than 1 meter, that is deeming it minor. So this is definitely up to council to determine where you're comfortable delegating that authority. Is 1 meter too much? Are you more comfortable with 0.5 meter? So that's where there could be a lot more discussion on the comfort of council delegating those decisions and what makes it minor.
Okay, I have other question, but I'll focus on this topic now. So my first question is, item I does not alter land use or density, but can the maximum lot coverage be changed?
Go ahead.
Through the mayor, that's a good question. I'm going to have to look into this because I've had two different opinions on that, on whether that's a variance or a density increase. So it might matter, the circumstances might be important, but I don't have the answer right now.
Can I ask my questions? Yeah. On the number 1, for lot dimensions reductions, the variances for lot width or lot depth. So of not more than 10% of the required dimension. Can a developer ask for both at the same time?
The way I would interpret this, it would be as long as it's not more than 10%, it could be 10% width or depth, or say 10% width and 10% depth.
And more. I think this comes to the difference of a request for the Board of Variance and just a variance request. So correct me if I'm wrong, the Board of Variance, it's a really real need in a way, for example, the shape of the lot, and they cannot even build with the zoning because of the shape of the lot. Doesn't the setbacks would really impact the design and even complying with the zoning. So I understand. Sorry?
Hardship.
Hardship, yeah. But I'm saying, I was talking just the shape of the lot, for example. Some lots have, so in order to put a house, so I understand this kind of variance that you ask. In the bluff, for example, there are situations that, it really require. My concern with this is my experience here, sitting here for about 7 years, is that there's always requests for more. And the last, many of the developments, they came heavily with variances. So I think I get concerned because if the variance has to come to council, I'm not talking, obviously, the Board of Variance doesn't come to council. And, but if a variance comes to council, at least there are 5 people, we question, we hear from staff, we hear from the public. My concern is how much of this will be now a trend that every single developer will ask because construction costs are too much. And a meter, for example, seems a lot. I mean, we are already increasing a meter for low density. So anyone can ask for another meter. So now will be 2 meters. So I get concerned with requests, and it's not that I don't trust staff in this regard. I think it's easier for anyone, I mean, why not ask? And what will be the criteria if one person gets, and it's not really a hardship, but, okay, I really want to build that, and I need less setbacks. The next one will learn and would ask for less. So I get really nervous with all these requests being directly dealt with by staff and the amount that this could lead. So that's my concern.
Okay, that's a valid concern. I don't feel so nervous about it. I do recognize, I mean, it does seem like the variances that, regardless of whether there's a lot of development or not going on in town, it ebbs and flows. Like on the council that Councillor Lumley and I were on 2 terms ago, there were a lot of minor variance requests that came in, or I felt there were a lot. Anyway, there was too many, in my view, that were just like minor setback changes that the neighbors agreed with, and that there were other quite minor ones. It just seemed like there were a number that were like that. That it would be more efficient to allow staff to deal with them, and especially under some criteria for it. So that's been my experience. But I know, it's interesting during this term there hasn't been much like that. Councillor Lumley, I see Councillor Kroll.
I have to agree with you, Mayor, because I do remember that, and it does seem that, and like, as far as people doing things and expense, everything's so expensive, it's just maybe like our goal should be removing time and costs and red tape and stuff like that. So, because I remember the one was like a 6-inch deck overhang or something. And like nobody cared and nobody would have noticed, but it came to council and it was just like, it was like, I'd rather have someone like pull out one of my fingernails than go through that again. So I don't have that much concern either.
Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. I think, well, first of all, I think we've got a really good, competent staff. And I think it behooves council to trust staff to work in the best interest of the community. There are sufficient checks and balance in the system. I don't think everyone's going to come and ask for an extra 10% just because they can. With the cost of building, who wants to build an extra 10%? You know, we've disincentivized larger single-family homes with the DCCs. So I think staff have sufficient checks and balances that and I personally trust staff to use the tools that they've got to work in the best interest of the community. And to Councillor Lumley's point, every time that, we need 6 inches here or a foot there, does it need to come to council? I don't think it does. I think, we've got competent staff, and it's my feeling that we should give them the power to be able to exercise. They've got enough checks and balances in the system that they can regulate it. So I'm agreeing with Councillor Lumley, and I'm certainly I'm in favor of the options that we're giving staff to work with.
Thank you, Councillor Kroll. And Councillor D'Andrade, I expect you're probably going to reiterate what you've said. I'm just wondering if we're going to do, where we're moving, if anyone wants to move the motion or.
Well, first of all, I was going to, make a point and maybe even make it, because I would like maybe feel like at least, okay, well, I'm concerned with the setbacks. If we have already internal setbacks that is 1.5, and it could be changed to 75. Just for example, I asked that I would like to have my house a little bit bigger, and it's not going to impact density because it's still the same number of, I just want a bigger house. So and I want a taller house. I mean, I don't understand the criteria why it will be given. And if, for example, one of the heights was 15 meters, you can squeeze, it says from 4 to 5 stories. So to squeeze a 5th story, maybe, but if you give the extra meter, now you can have another story. So I'm just confused where this is going. It's very concerning.
I guess what I'm hearing from you, Councillor D'Andrade, is you're concerned that the norm will just be that everyone asks for a variance on every single house they build, and it's automatically going to be granted. No. Yeah, so maybe I don't expect that would be the case, but could staff kind of run us through? I know there are so many different examples, but I mean, clearly the intent of this, it's not to just kind of raise the allowable building heights in town by a meter. It's more like there needs to be some demonstrable reason for variance. I see maybe, yeah.
I'll follow up.
Okay, thank you.
So there are so many reasons why people apply for variances, but I think the conversation today is, are you comfortable with a meter? And if not, then we can reduce that number. But the intent here is to identify what is minor and what you don't want us to waste your time with by bringing reports forward, by doing neighbor notifications, that kind of thing. So that's where you should focus your discussion. But, we get variances for a meter, we get them for 2 meters, we get them for 3 meters, we get variances for a number of reasons. Right now, in the draft zoning bylaw, the maximum height in the low density is 8.5 meters. So is it 8? Yeah, it's 8.5 meters. So is that 1 meter comfortable for you to delegate that or not? And then that's kind of where you need to think about what's comfortable and what you want to delegate or not. You can take it out completely. That's also an option.
Councillor Lumley.
Okay. My understanding is that these are non-impact kind of decisions. Like, these aren't major, decision-making moments. These are like somebody's asking for a meter that doesn't really matter to anybody but that person. Like, it's not like you're gonna grant a meter down on Gower Point Road or, you know, where it's 8.5 and you know there's 1,000 people there that'll hold you to it. You're not just gonna go ahead and grant that variance. That would come to council. That's kind of like the direction I was thinking that this is, right? Is that,
Yeah, that's a good question, and no, that's not how it applies. So this is criteria for how we apply variances. So if you want to say, like, if you wanted to delegate height increases for a meter, then, but not in specific areas, you could remove, say, Lower Gibsons, or remove certain areas, or you could just take it out, and we can bring variances, height variances to council.
Through you, Ms. Mayor. We don't get a lot, I mean, we get variance requests, but we work within the policies of the town. We don't have a sort of a separate stack of free heights to pass around. Those are cases that would be somebody in a situation that the bylaws already don't allow for. So that doesn't happen very often, and we certainly keep those in mind. So we encourage council to work within the setting of the goals. Like, the goal isn't, trust is important, but it's not necessary. You should be comfortable that we're following what the rules that council set within those terms, rather than hope you guys make it the right decision. Our decision can only be based on what the terms of these are. There's one important part in this bylaw which I want to highlight too, is the reconsideration, which any decision, I'd say arguably we get more decisions on variances or from a delegated authority perspective that people will disagree with us than agree with us. And when they don't agree, it's very important to have the consideration where there's always an option for council to have another look. So I think that's important for people to know and for council to know, that we're not going to be making a decision on our own that you don't support or the community doesn't support. That's what anyone has that option.
Can we move option 2 and 3? I'm really nervous with the setbacks, especially what's happening, and perhaps staff understand better. I'm nervous with 50%. Because 50% in a 3-meter setback is 1.5 meters. So I understand, Mayor, that the director said there are many situations, but I don't know all the situations. My understanding is if it's hardship, it's dealt in, well, with the Board of Variance, and if it's not hardship, then it deserves a more consideration. I get nervous because, and even for example, for fire reasons, right? 1.5 set. I know at the beginning of the change of the OCP bylaw, it was proposed 1.2, while I knew from the onset that 1.5, it's what the fire department recommended. And thanks God it came back and we changed. But I get nervous because we are allowing more units, but I get nervous with all these variances. I rather that we understand the zoning and change the zoning to allow for more, but we already increased 1 meter, now is 8.5. It's gonna be easy for someone ask for another meter, and what's gonna prevent? That's the part that I have difficult understanding.
Someone can ask, they won't necessarily get it. I just can, 2 and 3, I'm trying to find what you're referring to, Councilor Andrade.
Page 71, 2 is about
on my page
setbacks. Oh, I thought this was the latest draft, sorry. It's Schedule B.
Okay. Schedule D. So do others find this? Others, Councilor Kroll?
What I'm wondering is, should we give this first reading and add it to the workshop rather than dissecting it now?
Add it to the workshop, I don't know. you want to give first reading and we'll just, then there's time for amendments, considerations in the future that they could, I mean, yeah, I can't even find the page.
Well,
that-
through you,
that
sir,
If Councillor DeAndrade has some specific, Councillor Andrade, I'm just saying, to Councillor Kroll's point, if you've got some specific changes you want to make, you could then bring them to second reading and ahead of time, we could consider them. I'm not sure, do you have specific changes, or are you?
Well, I think my first was going to even remove the two, about the setbacks, but if we are going to give staff the authority, I think should be the minimum, 10%. And 1 meter seems very high. I'll give, I don't know, 20% of this maximum, because for the reasons it's not about trust, it's about what, I don't get the criteria. What's the criteria that someone would ask for more? We have a bylaw. If it's a hardship, it will go to the Board of Health.
Well, there's always a degree of delegation of authority, which is explained in the report.
Okay, maybe I'll make a motion.
Yeah,
I'll make a motion.
I don't think Councillor Kroll, did you make a motion, or are we?
Well,
No, it
I'm,
was complicated with a workshop and stuff, so.
as I said, I'm quite comfortable with this, but obviously there are members of council who aren't. So if it's going to require further discussion and dissection, or maybe we should just call the vote as it stands.
Other members of council? No? So just not doing anything for this, Councillor Thompson?
Right here does not contradict safety, which would be the fire department. I mean,
So we've got a number of options here. I mean, sorry, do you want, you've got one that you want to put forward, Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I'm prepared to move option 3 and do 3 readings. That's
Okay.
where I'm at.
Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Kroll. Any further discussion? Councillor DeAndrade?
Sorry, what is option 3? Because I have the bylaw, but what's
For
option?
second and third reading
Oh, that is passed right now, second and third?
without changes to the document.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries. And Committee of the Whole. Is that where we are? Yes. No, that was moved. So the minutes are just there for information. And there's a recommendation on the drainage utility feasibility study, Phase 2, cost recovery options. That's a move by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor DeAndrade. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? The motion carries. And then there is a motion on the next page of the agenda on the urban forest implementation plan, that it be endorsed. Moved by Councillor DeAndrade, seconded by Councillor Kroll. Any discussion?
yes.
Okay. Councillor Lumley.
There was discussion at the meeting with respect to, it says endorsed. Now, there's quite a few things in the plan that just a blank endorsement. And I did bring up and I know they're gonna come to council with, and like, the first part of it was, I know it's not here in front of us, but the first part of it was kind of like, it could be executed at status quo as far as like resources and stuff, but it appeared during the plan that there will be budgetary considerations and staffing, I guess, considerations as well. Is that right? So are we endorsing that like right now then, or like the later parts of this plan, like the,
No.
okay.
No, I mean, that would need to be approved in a budget at sometime in the future. That's,
Okay.
yeah, future council would really, that
So
would be up to
we're
them. But-
endorsing
But a
the-
plan is a plan, like it is the plan, that there would be those elements to it. But it doesn't mean we're jumping to those points of hiring positions or putting funds in.
$1,000 trees a year? 1,000 trees a year?
1,000 trees a year, is that what you're, so CAO
Sure.
could maybe,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just confirming your, sort of the roadmap per se, and just identifying what the resources are. But your approval of this only sets this plan in motion, but every one of those items that involves necessity of resources are coming back to council for consideration.
okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? The motion carries. Now on to administration reports. We have a report on page 91 from our Manager of Corporate and Legislative Services regarding the appointment of Chief and Deputy Chief Election Officer, which I think is straightforward, and there's a recommendation here. Unless there's any, okay, moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor Lumley. Any discussion, questions? All those in favor? The motion carries. 7.2 is the Manager of Corporate and Legislative Services as well, which is a report on the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund grant application 2026. So that's also a brief 2-page report with a recommendation involved. Is there any elaboration on this from staff? No, okay. Moved by Councillor Kroll, making the motion, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any discussion? All those in favor? Usually in favor of applying for grants. And then next is 7.3, the Sunshine Coast Regional Accessibility Plan, page 97. So there's a extensive plan in the agenda and options on pages 5 and 6. I don't know if staff wants to address this at all. I know probably Councillor Kroll will speak to it as well, but.
It's a short presentation.
Oh, great, it's a presentation. Didn't know that.
And then you can just,
In 2021, the Accessible BC Act came into effect to improve accessibility and inclusion for people with disabilities. The Act establishes 3 key requirements: establish an accessibility committee that represents diverse lived experiences to identify barriers and opportunities within that community, developing an accessibility plan, and creating a public feedback mechanism to receive input on accessibility issues. In 2023, the Town of Gibsons, District of Sechelt, and the Sunshine Coast Regional District jointly established the Sunshine Coast Regional Accessibility Advisory Committee. The committee is composed of dedicated volunteers with lived experience related to disabilities. The plan outlines the approach, provides background on the Accessible BC Act, and highlights key areas for improving accessibility within our communities. Through staff-led environmental scans and collaboration with the committee, a list of local barriers and opportunities was developed. The plan provides 3 focus areas to work towards removing accessibility barriers. Number one is accessible transportation advocacy. So local government advocacy is critically important to improve accessible transit options on the Sunshine Coast, which are outside the scope of local government functions. This was identified as the most important option for the committee. Number two is the built environment audit for the governments to prepare an inventory of government buildings, parks, recreation facilities, and public use facilities maintained by the local government, complete a built environment audit for key facilities in the inventory, and develop a prioritized action plan for improvements based on the audits. Number three was training to coordinate and provide accessible specific training for all staff who interact with the public, and consider providing training to all incoming staff as part of initial onboarding. This is an example of identified barriers and opportunities, and these form the foundation of this plan. To effectively implement the plan's recommendations, the committee further recommends that the Sunshine Coast local governments explore opportunities to secure funding for a full-time accessibility coordinator. This position would support and advance the priority focus areas. A grant is currently available from Spark BC. However, organizations must have an accessibility plan that has been adopted by council. This grant is a one-time funding for local governments of up to $25,000 to remove barriers for persons with disabilities by implementing one of the initiatives identified in the accessibility plan or by the accessibility committee or the feedback mechanism. As part of the Accessible BC Act, local governments are required to establish a public feedback mechanism to support the ongoing identification of accessibility barriers and opportunities for improvement. This mechanism will be through the SCRD's Let's Talk page to ensure that community members can continue to contribute to the enhancement of accessibility across the region. The Accessible BC Act also requires that accessibility plans be reviewed and updated at least once every 3 years. And these updates will allow local governments to reflect the evolving community needs, evaluate progress made, and adjust priorities accordingly. Implementation of the Sunshine Coast Regional Accessibility Plan will depend on available budget and staff capacity. Staff will prioritize actions and seek funding opportunities to support plan implementation. The Sunshine Coast Regional Accessibility Advisory Committee also made a recommendation for the terms of reference to be revised to require committee members to meet yearly or as needed instead of quarterly to review the effectiveness and completeness of the accessibility plan for each local government. In consideration of this 3-year cycle, staff also proposed a 3-year term for committee members. The recommendations are that the Sunshine Coast Regional Accessibility Plan be endorsed and that further changes to the SCRD's section in Appendix A be incorporated after being endorsed by the SCRD board, and that staff continue to support the Sunshine Coast Regional District with the Let's Talk webpage, content development for public engagement on the accessibility plan, and that the Sunshine Coast Regional Accessibility Advisory Committee terms of reference be amended to reduce the minimum number of meetings per year from quarterly to annually and extend the committee members' terms to 3 years. Optional additions are that staff be directed to apply for a grant from Spark BC of up to $25,000 for implementation of the Sunshine Coast Regional Accessibility Plan, and that staff report back in quarterly reports on accessibility improvements completed by the town.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Do you have questions, or let's go for questions first? You might have answers. Councillor Thompson.
It was, what a report. It was shocking to see how much coordinated work lies ahead across so many sectors. And the first thing that jumped out at me is $25,000 really is a small budget to work with for so much work that needs to be done. What's the financial framework that extends into provincial or federal? Is this really just a grant opportunity only, that there's no other responsibility on behalf of the province and the feds? I'm just shocked by that, because so much of this is essential. It's not a nice to have.
I see our Director of Finances.
The present
Answer that.
framework, as far as I'm aware, at all government levels is new builds, new assets. We plan it in and do it from the get-go. Anything that's existing, if it's a major upgrade, picture a huge renovation in a building or an expansion of a building, it happens then. And then the rest essentially does not happen because there is the money. We're not in like a California situation where the rule just says immediately all washrooms will be this way. We're not operating in that kind of environment. And during, at that level, so far, I've not seen any funds anywhere.
Questions? Yeah, Councilor D'Andretti.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was interesting reading the plan, how accessible it was, so I appreciate. It was very easy. One thing that caught my mind, caught my attention, sorry, obviously not only the number, it's almost 30% of the population, but with regards to communication, which is page 21 of the report. So they talk about access to municipal information and services. Communication currently heavily relies on online platforms, and then they offer solutions. Is this, I mean, I don't know how much this is going to be high budget, but I was just wondering if staff had a chance just to look at and see if this is one of the things that could be addressed almost immediately.
Don't know who from staff might want to tackle that one.
Well, one of the things we have been able to figure out is for those different people face different barriers. So, for example, in just publishing this agenda, we had to put it out in different format that was readable to a reader, which is a piece of equipment that can be used for someone who has visual challenges or things like that. So we are still discovering what some of the different ways are, and they're quick to let us know, and the committee's been really helpful in helping us identify what they need and bringing that to our awareness. And we're doing what we can to make sure that our documents that we publish on our website are readable by those who have that barrier.
And just on that's great, thank you very much. So on this note, how do people learn about that? Because it's also communication, right?
There will be a public engagement after this using the SCRD's Let's Talk webpage. So there will be a process once the plan is adopted with letting the public know what we're working on, what the plan is, and I would imagine there'll be progress updates in the future as well. But the first step is just to get the plan adopted, and then that public engagement process would start.
Councilor Kroll?
Thank you, Mayor White. Just something I noticed in going through this, and I'm sure it's just a simple omission on the part of the chair of the Accessibility Board, is in the overall document statement, there's an acknowledgement of First Nations, both the Seashelt and the Squamish Nations. In the report or the message from the chair, he just references the Seashelt Nation. Now, it may be in the context that that's where he's working from, but he does say that, you know, the district extends from Port Mellon to Egmont, which covers both nations. So it'd be worth just pointing out to Bill that there should be probably a joint acknowledgement. Councillor D'Andretti alluded to it when I first started attending the Rick Hansen accessibility conferences, which 3 years ago. The statistics at that point were 20% of the Canadian population had accessibility issues. It's now 27%. When you look at the population of the Sunshine Coast, which is about 31,000, somewhere around there, based on the last census, based on the census statistics of 24.7% of the population having accessibility issues, that's 7,945 people. That's greater than the population of this town of people that are being excluded basic rights. So I think, yes, it's money, but I think we really need to think hard, particularly when we're looking at the official community plan and zoning bylaws, like sidewalks that you can't, someone in a wheelchair with an accessibility dog can't walk on most of our sidewalks because they're too narrow. So there's things like that that we really need to consider. I'm certainly in support that we approve this and apply for the funding. If all three governments apply for the funding, that at least creates a sum of money that would, even if it's on a contract basis, probably be able to hire a coordinator for a year to try and lift some of this, because most of our staff already are working with projects off the corner of their desk. We can't expect staff to suddenly take on this. Let's Talk is, at least it's a portal for people to put their feedback and input into, but it has to be implemented. And I think there could be, great efficiencies in having a single person sort of accessing that information, implementing that information, and possibly that person, if they were hired on a contract basis, could even be a person that has a background through the Rick Hansen Foundation that would be in a position to advise building departments and planners as things come up, how it should be done. We can't expect staff to be on top of all of the implications and ramifications of accessibility design and your universal design. So I would move the motion and add to it that staff be instructed to apply for the funding available, and that we, in our recommendation to the other levels of government, that we also recommend that they apply for that funding, that it might go towards the procurement of a person to execute some of this.
Okay, so I think, that went on, but I think you're moving to adopt it with the recommendation that we apply for the Spark funding as well. Those are pre-written. Okay. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Thompson. I was just reminded, Louise, you were part of this committee too, right? Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for your contributions. Councillor Kroll?
Yeah, just in Louise's defense, when we became for quite a number of occasions, we met in Gibsons at the high school, which really made it easy, or at the rec center, which made it very easy for the student on council to attend. It made it accessible. Yes, what a unique concept. When the meetings were at the regional district and the district of Sechelt, it did become a little more challenging for the student to attend, particularly Sechelt. So, there is a challenge there, but I think it's critically important that the student on council be engaged with this, because they're the ones who are.
Thank you, Mayor. It just made me think, because obviously a big part of this 27%, seniors, they come with some disabilities. But it just made me think the scenario with youth. And I was just curious if our student council has any insight of, in a school situation, what challenging. I'm just curious, because I didn't see any reference in the report, but I don't want to put her in the spot, but in a way, I would love to hear if it's possible.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the question. Are you asking, from youth perspective, in school, in town in general, the issues? I do think generally, at least the school district does try very hard to support all youth, no matter any sort of physical, mental issues or disabilities. There is times I've spoken to some of the people who work with those students, and there are certain, like, let me say, activities and opportunities that aren't always made available, but that is something that we started working on and discussing at the beginning of this year at one of the school district meetings. So that's something they're moving towards and is being actively advocated for currently.
Councilor Kroll?
I would just highlight that it was our student on council who got this whole project off, up and running when he advocated the difficulties that students had getting around this community. And it led to the delegation to the regional district for free bus transit for students that, we embraced. It went to the regional district twice. It was finally passed. It went to EVICC and later to UBCM. So I think it's critically important, and certainly, I applaud the youth engagement in this process to date.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is 7.4. It's a report from the Director of Finance on Oceanside Recreation Infrastructure, swim, drink, fish opportunity. I'll go to the Director of Finance to introduce this.
Thank you, Mayor White. An opportunity came to staff's attention at the beginning of November when a flagship project was announced by the City of North Vancouver and Swim, Drink, Fish for a $26 million outdoor swimming pool in Burrard Inlet, along with amenities. So we looked at that news release, and then we noticed at the bottom of it that Swim, Drink, Fish actually intended to launch a program and select 5 other projects in BC. And so we had a look at their site in City of North Vancouver, and the more we looked at it, the more we thought, well, we have something here that's compatible with the OCP and existing projects and existing community priorities, so we should make the effort to pursue it. This is quite a long report. It basically includes everything that we have learned since November 5th. And the reason for all that information is if we wish to be part of this, we have to get an application in, the town does, by January 9th. And council therefore has to make a decision on that. So this is the information we can provide, and the decision involves, well, does the town want an expanded project down at Armours Beach and with connections to the other parts of the waterfront? If so, is it prepared to issue some new debt as part of this project process to fund a 20% share of the town? And those are things that staff can't answer. And so we bring this report to you. It innocently enough says, can we have approval for a grant application? But really behind that it is this a good project? The Rotary Club of Gibsons has been championing a project down there, and we've met with them and discussed the work they've done and this opportunity, and they're pretty excited about it. And they understand that if an application goes in by the end of January, Swim, Drink, Fish says they will let people know in February whether they're going to be one of the projects or not. So we don't want to abandon the work we're doing right now, even if its scale is smaller, because we might be right back there next March. So I think as far as the key points go, I've pretty much covered everything, and would be happy to take any questions.
Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, through the mayor, which I I mentioned to you probably quite recently. So my question would be, how would this integrate with, I mean, I'm sure everyone's patiently waiting for a project that was designed years ago and approved, which is the seawalk upgrades. So, my question is, how does this integrate with the seawalk upgrades? And, yeah, I certainly wouldn't want this to take any precedence over completing that project, if you put another project on the table. But, I mean, it sounds great, but that's my question.
Well, this is a project opportunity with 80% of the funding coming from an external party, and of course they have their wishes about projects, and it's what they're prepared to offer, which is pretty generous. But of course, their perspective is the community interested or not? Sometimes getting all the priorities taken care of, including developments that have been listed for a long time, a big factor is just how the funding for them comes available. And I would, right now, if council is interested in doing a significant project connected with swimming, this would be the opportunity. Would it preclude doing other projects? Maybe not, but there's only so much time and money by year. So I would imagine if this is going on, it would be hard to be doing the seawall at the same time.
Maybe further to the Director of Finance's comments. So the grant for the foreshore improvements has a deadline of completion by the end of 2026. So that certainly is a priority for us to complete. And we are advancing the detailed design with the intention of putting the tender out in the spring, I would say, would be our timeline. Construction window for that would be August, I believe it's August 15th for foreshore work until the end of the calendar year. So we're very much working towards the intention of starting work down there at the end of summer and completing that work through the fall. We still have some logistical issues to sort out before the tender gets put out. I don't know what the timeline is with this swim, drink, fish grant funding, but I think from my perspective, from infrastructure perspective, we really do need to commit to completing that grant funded project that we've already got on hand. And then I think that we can certainly leverage all of the environmental and engineering design that's gone into the foreshore upgrades, and maybe there's some information that we've already kind of gained, especially on the environmental with the eelgrass beds, that would be beneficial to finishing the improvements at Armours Beach.
So if I may, it's an example of different grants arriving at different times. So that project would go along this way. If the town were selected for this project, it would do detailed design work and preparations in 26 and probably be actively constructing and procuring off-site in order to implement things for the spring of 2027.
Councillor DeAndre, is that who I saw next? Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two questions. One, I mean, I love the idea. I think anything that can move people is a great idea. I love the idea of a long swimming pool, much appreciated, and everything else that was in the report. I understand how much the town has to come up as our share of the cost, but I don't have an idea how this will translate in the, 10 years, 12 years, 20, in terms of debt. And the second question would be, I know the money that we receive from tourism, I know we put a percentage to housing, but, okay, maybe remind me. I was just wondering if this money that comes from tourism, there's some part that could go to the future maintenance of.
We get no money from tourism.
No, for the, the tax, the tourism tax, that's what I meant.
Okay.
Sorry.
You want me to explain this again?
No.
MRDT tax it's collected from short-term rentals and hotels, the short-term rental portions. It all goes to the province of BC, The short-term rental portions are, by provincial legislation, intended to come back to regions to pay for housing. They do not come back here. That's what we've been advocating for. They go to the regional district. And, well, actually, they go to they go back to Sunshine Coast Tourism. They're split two ways, to the Catet Regional District, Sunshine Coast Regional District, to do housing projects regionally. And nothing comes to the town of Gibsons. That's our whole point that we've been frustrated with. But yeah, no, we don't get any, whether it's for housing or swimming or anything, we don't get money for tourism, yeah.
No, the answer, the finance.
I really want to encourage some council discussion here. So, Councillor Kroll?
Thank you, Mayor White. So the two things here. We have to, first of all, in order to apply for this grant, we have to commit to the 20%, the AAP for $750,000. And we have to approve that before staff could even apply for the grant, correct?
Through the mayor, yes.
Yep. Okay, thank you. And then we have to decide which project we want to approve, right? It's not all four projects, it's one of the projects. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I follow the question, but I can clarify that we have an existing design for an upgrade at Armours, and the report comments on an expansion. So essentially, there's a small pool, a large pool, a buoyed swim space beyond that, a jump feature. That's as much as we know right now. The amenities that need to go along with that. So for example, if the capacity or expected use is a certain amount and 2 washrooms don't do the job, then the project needs an additional 2 projects go into the budget. It's is that what you were looking for, Councillor Kroll?
Thank you for what we have to approve or reject for 1 to 4, which is the Armours Beach upgrade, the Armours Beach expansion, the Gibsons Sailing Club, or the Gibsons Landing Harbor Authority project. So from what I'm perceiving is the direction that we seem to want to go in is that we would approve 1 and 2 of the recommendations.
I'm sorry, I forgot about all those recommendations. But if I could, I just wanted to let you know that, I mean, Swim Drink Fish is not a government body. We would be working with a nonprofit. It's well established, but it doesn't do programs like this very often because it doesn't have big donors showing up with $70 million to ask them to do a program. One of the things they make clear is they're not expecting, other than a preliminary overview of what the project could be, to appear at this stage, because they want to pay 80% of the detailed design, and they want to pay 80% of a public engagement process to make sure that all parts of the detailed design meet with the community's approval, because the donor has no interest in funding anything that not everyone is satisfied with. Yeah.
There were some hands over here.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
We couldn't, through you, Mayor, we couldn't put the foreshore project into this as part of our contribution. There's no way to amalgamate.
Yeah.
Yes, the whole issue of money. So if I may combine a couple of elements here. If you borrow about $1 million over 20 years, it will cost the town about $85,000 a year to service that. Now, this is an item that council could resolve to support now, pursue new debt if that's the only way to go. It's unclear as we go along the path that the town necessarily has to do that. We do have a few other options, but they're more ifs. There's some other grants and programs that might have money available. We're still working with Rotary, who has one for sure very good idea for a source of funding that's, could be fairly significant. So we have to work our way along. But in order to make an application, we have to know at least there's one way for sure we could get money, even though the community through an alternative approval process would still have some additional say on that.
Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I know with the Armours Beach project, the Gibsons Rotary has been very heavily involved in that. And I don't know, in the conversations you've had with them, are they, the 750,000, that's just the town's contribution, or is Rotary able to do anything to offset the matching funds? And if I can add to that, I know the Beachcomber fund that was set up when Beachcombers ended to create a scholarship, Rotary got permission to take that out of the trust so they could use that funds for matching funds. And I don't know what it currently is. The last time I was privy to that information, it was about $27,000. I'm just looking for ways to soften the blow when, if we have to go to the public for an AAP.
My advice to council would, at this time, would to look at this project strictly from a debt focus. Is it reasonable or not? And as time goes along with all budgeting and opportunities come up, we can adjust things if we have more favorable outcomes in the future. But I think it would be best. City of North Vancouver went through the same line of thinking as they got involved in all of this, and in the end, they just settled on debt.
Just a clarification. My understanding is, but I just want to hear from the Director of Finance, that the minimum we can ask is $3 million.
Yes, Councillor, that's absolutely right.
Okay.
Thank you. I know this project has been something that, you know, a lot of people have been advocating for a long time. So I'm would like to move that staff be directed to prepare an application, but I almost feel that the funding for the AAP be the first part of the motion, and then the project become the second part, because the project isn't going to happen without the funding. And I think if we do float an AAP, no pun intended, we are going to get a certain amount of feedback from the community to give us some insight to whether the community is willing to embrace this additional taxation that's going to be required. So I am moving the staff proceed with this and the AAP.
Is that a concern from staff about this motion, or is that just more?
I from a staff perspective, I believe it, by approving an application and approving the 20% source of funding being debt through AAP, whether we list it number 1 or 2, it just doesn't matter. Yeah. Councillor Kroll was right in identifying that the recommendation has a couple of items, though, for accept or reject.
Yeah, it's very complex. Scale.
Just before you consider a second, I just want to clarify your comment around 1, 2, 3, 4, those other items there. Those other items, those are the partners we've spoken with, and there's potential to work with them, but the most certain one are 1 and 2, but we don't necessarily need to exclude 3 and 4, the Harbor Authority and the Sailing Club, because we're still planning things out, and they can still be our partners even though the work will primarily happen at Armours. So I just don't, they're not necessarily, council, in my view, doesn't need to exclude these folks just yet.
So, but looking at that another way, are these motions even necessary? All these ones that are like detailing each partner when we can just engage them anyway? Like, and try to get, or
I-
with the
Mayor White, I would point out
need
that
for the application.
that the sailing club and the harbor authority might feel that the town should just take care of the 20%. And the point of having that in this here is, does council think that's reasonable? If council does, great, and if, I mean, it's up to council.
Okay, we've got a seconder for the motion. Not me, right? Oh, yeah, does anyone, I thought you look like you have your hand up to speak to. I'm for all, like, that part of it too. This is all just too complicated for me. But I'll plead. As Councillor Kroll points out, if it goes to an AAP, then that's one aspect. The community can have a say in it. All this, yeah, these bits about approving each potential partner at this point, when I haven't even talked to them. I don't know what they're. I don't really understand that part. So, Councillor Lumley.
I'm a bit conflicted because the only thing I can remember is like leaving a small section of the bluff that couldn't get their sewer and the road paved, and it seems, I don't know, this is just me, but borrowing money to make a pool in the ocean, I don't know. I mean, you can already swim in the ocean. I don't know about building a pool in the ocean. I mean, if you could somehow swing it to improve some more of our waterfront, like the pathway between Grandma's and Wine Garden Park, maybe call that a fishing area. I don't know. I mean, I don't think I have enough information on it right now. I'd have to wrap my mind around it and ask more questions, but that would be my gut like, I'm conflicted, I guess, borrowing all this money to build a pool in the ocean, whereas we should probably borrow money to maybe set a priority a little higher than that in some other area of town. That's all. That's my gut instinct.
Any others, Councillor Gadretti?
Thank you. Maybe I misunderstood. Is it that this is just a preliminary, and if we are pre-approved, we would ask the people? Is it? That's my understanding. So we are not committing at this point. We are just saying.
I think if we're applying for this, we're going to be expected to pay our share. That's what we're moving to apply for.
No, Mayor White, it's a little different than that. We can't be making an application without any idea about how the town is going to pay its share. However, if Swim Drink Fish selects the town's project for consideration, it will have an interview with everyone. And if they're satisfied that there's a way for the town and them to successfully work together, it will then move on to the negotiation of an agreement. So there won't be like senior government, here's the agreement, sign it if you want the money. It will be a negotiation. And as I explained earlier, there will also be their requirement for public engagement to make sure there's a project that's good. And of course, it makes sense that that public engagement would happen at the same time as information for an alternative approval process. And if it didn't work out, I think that's, where both sides could revisit things.
Okay, so there are some outs.
Yes, and Mayor White, I don't want to disagree with your notion that, hey, if council doesn't want to address partners and stuff at this point, just simply an application and the possibility of debt funding, that would still be enough to advance this if council wants it advanced. Thank you.
I feel a lot more comfortable with that explanation. That's helpful. And I would second the motion. I'm not sure if I can second the motion if we're, oh, you already seconded it? Okay. Based on what our CFO just said, I like the idea of approving this, but not making a partner commitment until we have a better understanding of what that encompasses through the process that you just explained.
Thank you, Mayor White. To my motion, the whole thing is contingent on us approving that we would service this with debt. And so to me, the important thing here is we have to approve, we would have to get approval that the community would support through the alternate approval process, this project. And if we don't get their approval, we can't apply for the grant. So that's why I said that the first part of it should be foremost, and that, that staff, start the alternate AAP process to determine whether there's community support for this debt servicing, and that staff continue working with community partners towards furthering the project. When this group, if we were to get the funding and this group come to the town and start talking to people, they might come up with a totally different project than any of us have perceived. But we have to make the commitment that we're going to approve this funding. I totally agree with Councillor Lumley that, we're probably going to hear from people, why isn't the money being spent on this? And I'm totally prepared to hear that information. But in the 7 years I've sat on council, I know that this foreshore and access to the foreshore and a swimming facility, whether it's just, an area of log booms or whatever, that it be expanded and enhanced. So, I'm willing to open it to public feedback, and that's what we're doing in improving the AAP process.
Vote then. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. And there's all these other options that we don't have to do those, so, okay. External, so 8.1 is the external ad hoc trustee remuneration committee. And this was a letter, it was under correspondence, asking for a representative to be appointed to this committee.
Mayor White, I'm just wondering if staff is supposed to make an application. I'm just left confused. Yes.
What do you think we voted on?
Yeah, I know, we feel.
So yeah, there was this correspondence. I could do this. Got experience as a trustee and all these other things that kind of list my resume in the letter. So unless someone else really wants to, I'm concerned about time, but I'm sure that we can do that. So, unless anyone really does anyone else have an interest in serving on this? No, I'm not gonna do it. So I'm not gonna move myself. So okay. Okay. So I think you're moving that I view the yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
What's the motion?
The motion's just like it says on here, and it's the mayor
Okay, thank you.
be appointed. All those in favor? Opposed? I'm just joking. Okay, good. And we've got a motion to close.
I can do an alternate.
Okay. Nope. We've still got a bylaw to look at after. And then the motion to close under Not that I've heard from staff. 91E, I, J, and K, the community charter, which is listed on the agenda. No, it's moved.
Okay, after, sorry.
I need a motion. Yeah, moved by Councillor Cole, seconded by Councillor Andrade, all those in favor. Motion carries, meeting's closed, break. 5.3, Gibsons and District Joint Fire Protection Commission bylaw. Councillor Kroll, do you want to make a comment?
Well, I just, we have, it's just with respect to the Gibsons Volunteer Fire Department, or this past week, Saturday, as you may be aware, was the Elves Club Crash the Coast, or as we with Search and Rescue refer to it as Fill the Boot, because originally we used boots to collect money. The Gibsons Volunteer Fire Department on Saturday collected $15,980.60 for the Elves Club. The next highest amount collected was the Royal Canadian Marine Search and Rescue Station 14 Gibsons, who collected $6,287.60. Shout out to Lansar, who collected $47.91.05. And then the Roberts Creek and Seashell Fire Departments were around just under $1,500 each. So there was about $33,000 raised for the Elves Club on Saturday, which is a huge lifeline to vulnerable people in our community. So, but the fire department really leads the charge, and it's a great example not only of their supporting the community, but the generosity of this community, which is certainly to be applauded. So I just wanted that not to go unrecognized.
Yes, and we've got a bylaw to pass too. So the bylaw is the Gibsons and District Joint Fire Protection Commission bylaw, and it's to get into alignment with the joint bylaw with the Sunshine Coast Regional District to affirm that, and moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor DeAndrade for second and third reading. All those in favor? The motion carries. And next meeting is Tuesday, January 6th, 2025, 3:30 p.m. So we've got a workshop and a second reading of a bylaw in between then. But that's the next regular meeting of council. Yeah, Councillor.
I'd like to suggest congratulations to the fire department and search and rescue, but I'd like to suggest maybe some sort of sticker or something that goes on your windshield, because you can't drive. You feel guilty. Either you go broke or you just feel guilty, because every time, because when I gave the guy money, I go, listen, I'm be coming through here like 5 times today, right? Don't expect me to throw money in that net every time. So a little sticker on the window or something, at least they know that I've given some money to them, right?
Yeah, no, you gotta pay every time. That's how they raise so much money.
Before I was on the, collecting side of it, I used to just go to the bank and I'd get like $50 or $100.
We're still in our meeting. But I want to say on a more official basis too, while we're doing our meeting, congratulations to David on your medal, your recognition for all your volunteer service. Yeah. Well deserved. It's great to see that.
I don't know how often I get to wear it.
Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Lumley, seconded by Councillor Kroll. All those in favor? I'm going to declare that adjournment, yeah.